Okay, hello. Welcome. This is Brian with HSC UAV, and I got Simon. Are you that way? Yes, you're that way on the screen over there.
We're getting pretty good with
And
this.
I know, right? It's just opposite of whatever I think I'm pointing to on my screen because the cameras, you're definitely not that way. So anyway, this is a series, video part of a series where we're comparing XAG and DJI. Make sure you check out the other videos that are part of this, where we just went through all of the field planning options between these systems. And so check that video out separate than this one. And then there's another video all about the hardware and the actual productivity and the spraying like out in the field. This video is going to be about the general differences between the apps, the operating systems, the user interface. We're going to talk a lot about that, including some of the hardware that goes into those things. Then we're going to talk about how to, the ability to set up how the aircraft are routed, if you will, or handle those fields that have been created. And then we're going to talk about different options for spraying configurations and parameters. And then we're going to talk about some template stuff. So let's jump into it. And again, if you haven't seen those videos, make sure you follow them because they're all related. Okay. All right, cool. Awesome. All right, Simon. So let's talk about the general difference between the DJI system. Oh, I'm terrible. Thanks. I'm just going to let you point. DJI and then XAG. That's over there. That's over there.
There you go.
All right. So first, I'm going to just point out some things that are obvious to me. First off, let's talk about the hardware difference. So, and again, the hardware video where we're out in the field, we talk a lot about the different control systems. But the DJI system is set up on a remote controller. It's an all-in-one system, really nice, beautiful, super great, feels good in your hand, heavyweight, really nice display. And then the XAG system runs in combination with its own remote controller and a device, which is either a phone or a tablet. So the DJI system is proprietary, which means that the programming, the planning that you're doing has to be done on that piece of hardware. It is effectively an Android tablet that is inside a remote controller case. That's really all it is. Simon, talk to us about the things that are great about that and the things that kind of suck about that approach.
Well, the great thing is that it's just incredibly easy, right? It's all built into the same remote. I have it right here. I turn it on and it works. I don't have to worry about connecting my phone to my remote and then issues with connectivity. It does remove one layer of potential problems, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's really easy to connect the remote to a cellular network or a Wi-Fi network to connect it to the internet while it's still connected to the drone. It's very simple. So I do really like that aspect of it.
Definitely. Yeah.
The remote itself, I know we discussed the hardware a little bit as well, but the screen is really bright. It's easy to see in the daytime. It's responsive. It just works well. I mean, you're not going to have issues with it. It's a
awesome,
really good system.
Yeah, I like that. I also like that it's separate from a separate device. So if I get a phone call, it's not interrupting my flight plan or any of that stuff, right? Like, I like that my cell phone is it's uninvolved in the whole situation. I do like that approach. Okay, now tell me about the things that you don't like about that approach.
Really, probably the biggest thing that I dislike about the DJI remote controller is the battery life. So it has an internal battery and an optional external battery. And in my experience, if you're operating on hot days with bright sunlight where the screen is at full brightness and there's a fan in the remote is running constantly, I mean, realistically, I get under 2 hours of runtime on both batteries. In fact, significantly less. In the time we've been recording, it's only got 2 lights remaining. And, we're inside in a temperature controlled environment and it was fully charged. So the battery life is a concern. You need
you're going to have extra batteries to be able to run all day. Okay.
A lot of external batteries to run.
Okay. Now on the XAG side, so again, the hardware is pretty straightforward, right? It's a remote controller that connects to a device Now, it can be Android or iOS, but the iOS app sucks as of today. Now, that could change in the future, but it just
Yeah.
sucks, period,
It's
right?
it's not ready for prime
Um,
time yet. There's pages that aren't translated properly, features that are
yep,
missing. It's like a couple versions behind, so we don't recommend it.
yep,
I do like that XAG is pushing for compatibility with Apple. That shows that
right,
they're open to, a global market, where in the
yep,
US we have 50% approximately Apple users.
right.
We want that compatibility. I think that's awesome,
Yeah, good
but
point.
it's
Yep.
not quite there yet.
Yeah. Now, so the XAG approach is really BYOT, bring your own D, or BYOD, bring your own
Yeah,
device, right?
yeah.
Which I also kind of like, because if I want to use, one of the new Pixel products, or if I want to use a tablet or a Galaxy, I can pretty much use whatever I want. I can optimize based on screen brightness, all weather ability.
The
So I
size
do
of the
like
screen.
some of the, and the size of the screen. I like some of that customizability approach. But again, now I've got two different things I'm charging, right? I've got to charge my own cell phone or my tablet, and I've got to charge a remote controller. So I know in the field when we're out there, we just have one of those battery packs that we just keep. You probably have it
Holsters.
right there. Yep, exactly. And then we're running all day. Now, the remote controller for the XAG platform will run, what, 10, 11 hours?
It's got a great battery life. I don't think I've ever had to charge it in the field. I turn it on in the
Wow.
morning and I turn it off when I leave. And it runs, I don't have to worry about the battery on it.
So you really are just charging your device more than
That's the
anything. Okay.
limitation. Yeah.
All right. Good to know. Okay, now tell me about the differences, because there's two different app interfaces that you're using on DJI, and also two with XAG, or how's that work?
So with DJI, the app that's built into the remote is called DJI Agris. That is what
Okay,
really runs the drone. That's how you can operate the drone, fly the drone. It also has field creation functions, as you saw in our video. However, there are additional features that are only available through DJI's companion smartphone
uh,
app called DJI Smart Farm. It's an app, it is available for iOS and Android. It works great on both.
cool.
And that allows you to view information such as device information, like how many hours are on the drone, the serial number of the aircraft, the ownership of the aircraft. It allows you to view flight records, so you can play back flights that you've done with your drones and
Yep.
share them as well with other operators. It
Okay.
also allows you to manage fields, for example, sharing fields with other operators. And they've since also added the ability to actually do flight planning in the smartphone app.
Awesome.
It's actually very similar to what XAG's system operates as.
Okay.
Unfortunately, what I've found is there's some discrepancies between the controller app and its features and the smartphone app and its features. For
Okay.
example, on the remote controller, the DJI Agris remote, I can add no spray zones, but I can't add no spray zones on the smartphone app. It just hasn't been updated to do that yet. So
Interesting.
there's discrepancies like that. Um,
Okay.
there's limitations to field planning on the phone as well because it doesn't allow any external device like an external GPS. You can only use basically satellite imaging or your phone GPS to mark it, which isn't as
Yeah.
accurate. So it's
Okay.
more limited to what you can do.
It's so interesting. It's like both of them have their own weird little quirks and approaches to stuff. Okay. Now, on the XAG side, tell me about companion apps and how that works on the, sorry, on XAG side.
Oh, this way.
Tell me about
Yes.
those companion apps. Yeah.
So XAG, actually, the name of the app kind of says it all. It's called XAG One, and it's one app for all, really. The phone
Okay.
app does everything. It's for your field creation, it's for flying the drone, it's for sharing information. It's all done through the same app.
Okay.
And it's always on your phone, which means, or a tablet, but you don't need to have the drone equipment to operate it. So, for example, you could for
Oh,
example, quote a job on site and create a field without having any of the drone equipment,
right.
which it can be a big benefit. That's kind of the purpose of DJI Smart Farm on the DJI side, but you can't fly the drone from there, so it's kind of a more of a process with DJI. You have to make sure that the phone app and the remote are connected to internet to sync, for example. So it's not as seamless of a system in that sense.
Okay. Okay. So you can't plan fields currently. You can't plan fields on DJI unless the drone is connected.
No, you can
Unless
plan.
you do the Smart Farm app.
No, you don't need to have the drone connected, but you have to have the remote to plan on DJI Agras or have the DJI Smart Farm app.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Whereas with XAG, you and I could be sitting at a restaurant, not having planned that we were going to plan a field, for example, right, or quote out a job, and we could just pull up the app anywhere we have our phone.
Right.
Okay,
And I
and
could
that may or
also,
may
for
not
example,
be applicable to
yeah,
people, and
maybe
depending
not.
on their situation. Yeah. Okay.
For me, the biggest thing that I found that I like about that is if I'm sending an employee to go do a job and I
Right.
already have that farm set up and mapped out, I can
Yeah.
just grab my phone and click share to my other operator and he has it and it's ready to go.
Oh,
Now,
that's pretty slick.
you can do the same thing with DJI. I want to make that clear, but it has to be
Okay.
done through the Smart Farm app. And that means that both operators need to have the app and
Yep.
you need to connect your remote to an internet connection to sync
That
that information
that had to
from the
have
cloud.
synced already. Right. I also can think of some times on the XAG side where I've had a client ask for something, right, on the services side of our business, where they've said, hey, can you send me the data from when y'all were out spraying so and so? And I can sign into our company account and just on a weekend and just send
Right.
that spray plan or the actual the I can't think of the term I'm thinking
Flight
of, but
records.
the
Yeah.
flight records, right? I
Right.
can just send that on a weekend if I wanted to, because
Exactly.
I have my device with me. So
Which again,
okay,
you can do with the DJI Smart Farm app, but to
as
sync
long as
the flight
yep,
records, you have to turn on this remote, connect it to an internet connection, click
okay.
sync in order to
So
sync.
for
So there's
people that
more
that's important to, they just
steps.
need to build in their standard operating procedures that that thing gets up connected to the internet
Daily.
frequently.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, I love it. Um, okay, and then let's talk about let's talk about the differences between um, the interfaces, just the visuals of these systems. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think one thing I really like about the DJI system, and I've said this before, is I think it's very intuitive. Like I love the green banner at the very top there that show it's in what the status or the general status of the aircraft is. I like the kind of semi-transparent errors. Um, Currently, those errors that are on the screen are appropriate because there's the tank is empty and there is
There you
an
go.
obstacle above the air. They're just
Yeah.
sitting outside of our shop right now.
Yeah.
But as you talked about in our other video, it is a bit overwhelming when you're trying to plan a field because there's so much data that isn't relevant to field planning that's
Right.
always there. But I do like the quick glance at like 25 satellites, our connectivity, our aircraft battery, our liquid tank, the settings. I think it's very intuitive. I think it's easy to understand and easy to see. Um, I like that aspect of it. And I look over at the XAG. Now we're in the kind of, I guess the field page,
Right.
or yeah, we're in the field page right now. I like that it doesn't show me unnecessary things when we're planning fields. I don't need to know about any of that other data right now because I'm just planning a field. Will you click on the operation tab and then that'll get us, I think, more neck and neck to see the two.
Yeah.
So this is really different, right? So there's our V40, the aircraft that it's hooked up to, our connectivity right now with that aircraft, with that little Wi-Fi thing, that it's GPS. And I know that when the T40's remote and the XAG systems are right next to each other, they do this. They
It
do
seems
not
to
like each other.
interfere. Yeah, it's constantly
So
cutting out.
it's lost connection because of that. Um, and then kind of a different way of displaying on the bottom right side of that section down there, you see the green circle around the remote control, and that's the remote controller's battery life. So as that little green ring disappears as it works counterclockwise, is showing just a quick visual of what your battery life is, which is really nice. There's, by the way, both of these systems will show you random errors, so expect that. I saw that on the V40.
Yeah.
88% now that it's back is the battery life, and then the liquid level is less than 2 liters.
Right.
Really nice and clean, a totally different approach, on these two platforms. Now, Simon, what else do you think people? Oh, let's show the camera as well on both.
Yeah, let's see if I
This
can
is a
get
big
signal on
difference.
this because, like I said, for some reason
You might have to pull those controllers apart from each other.
yeah, let's try to separate them apart a little bit more. I don't
There's a
know if it's
little
gonna,
lost in translation right
I
there.
don't know if
Little
it's gonna
Chinese
work, to
error.
be honest. Let's see. It keeps
It
disconnecting.
may or may not.
The drone's
Yeah,
also
they're
really
probably
far
too
away
close.
behind three concrete walls, so
Yeah,
that's another issue.
yeah,
But the DJI system's working perfect. So,
that's true. Yep. Look at that, man.
you know.
There's the V40 right next to it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we've said this time and
All
time
right.
again, the camera system, look, if you want a good camera, just buy a DJI drone. I
Yeah,
mean, we'll be
unbeatable.
honest.
100%. Yeah. And I think, again, to your point earlier about connectivity, the connectivity of the DJI system is really, really, really good. It's
It's
just
really good.
easier.
It's really good.
Now, people aren't going to fly in this environment where you've got two remote controllers right next to each other of two competing brands and two aircraft sitting right next to each other through
Right.
three different brick walls. But
Yeah,
still, I think it still indicates some
it does.
quality difference between those two things, right? Because the
100%.
DJI is unfazed by that. So
Yeah.
let's, got to keep that in mind, y'all. Okay, good. Now let's talk about the anything else about data sharing between teams that we should add on to this.
I think we covered most of it. Both systems have the options
Yeah.
to operate under a team, which means data is shared among users in that team. That's pretty similar.
Yeah.
The other thing that XAG can do that you can't do with DJI yet is sharing operating templates, which are
Okay.
like spraying settings, drone settings. Basically, the whole setup of the drone can be shared
Okay.
across teams or other operators.
Great. That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, there's a big difference between these systems when it comes. These are probably two really important factors, and we saved them for last. The first thing is about swarming. So the XAG system has the capability. Now, y'all got to listen because this is important. It's very, very, very comprehensive, I guess. The XAG systems have the ability to swarm multiple aircraft. The T40 does not have the ability to swarm multiple aircraft. Okay. So XAG can, DJI cannot.
Yet.
Now, not yet. Now, here's the nuance about all this. On the desk of the FAA for 3 years, 3 years, has been sitting a lot of petitions for multiple aircraft operations over 55 pounds. Okay. So is it relevant that you can swarm? Not really, because it's not lawful to do that. And there are other companies out there that are like, oh, you can swarm, and the whole software is set up for swarming. Yeah, well, you can technically, but it's not legal. So that's not helpful to you. But that can change. And we really do hope. That's why I'm calling the FAA out on this whole 3 years thing. We really do hope that the FAA makes that exception and or the approves the exemption to do that. But and then that goes to, would DJI be able to just flip a switch once it's lawful and make that happen? Maybe, I don't know. But right now, A, it's not lawful. B, you can do it technically on XAG systems, cannot do it on the DJI system. That's all you need to know about swarming. Okay.
Yeah.
On to battery. This is the second most important aspect about these things, I think, is about how low battery is calculated between these two systems. It's very, very, very different. All right, Simon, tell us about that.
Yeah, I'm going to switch over to these displays here for the settings.
Okay.
So these are the battery settings for each drone. You'll see on the XAG side, it has an RTL battery level. That's a return to launch battery level. On the DJI side, it has a low battery warning, and then what it does at low battery, which in this case is return to home. So at first glance, it seems like, oh, these have the exact same functionality.
Right.
But they definitely do not. And this is something that I've definitely encountered operating both systems. That is It's a big deal. I think it's something that's not really talked about and potentially dangerous. The DJI system, for lack of a better word, has it's not very intelligent in its low battery
It's
measurement.
dumb.
It's pretty dumb. What it
Okay.
does is when it gets to 20%, it triggers the return to home failsafe, which by the way, by
Okay.
default from the factory is not enabled. It'll just keep hovering or keep flying until it reaches a critical level and then land. That's another story.
Okay.
It that's it's
That's
weird.
extra dumb. That's dumb
So
squared.
the biggest things here is that it's not calculating the distance from home or the payload weight, which are two critical factors to how long the drone can fly at 20% battery charge. Because if the tank
Right.
is full, you might get 1/4 the flight time versus if it's empty. Or if it's far
Right.
away, how long is it going to take to come home? So, and I've personally had this happen. I talked to a lot of people that run DJI systems that have encountered this where the drone isn't able to make it all the way home before it reaches 5% critical low battery warning, at which point it will simply stop and land wherever it's at, which typically indicates a crash. you know,
I mean,
it's
because it could be landing in corn, it could be landing in a ditch, it could be landing on top of a vine or
or
a
on top of
tree,
somebody's house. I mean,
or an invasive. If you're doing invasive aquatics, you're
in the
landing
water.
in a pond.
So it's not the best system. So with the DJI system, we have to be hyper aware of how far away it is, and what our battery level is at all times to make sure it comes back
Okay.
on time.
You really have to manage it. DJI is not managing it in this
Nope.
current edition of the software.
No.
And now I do like that it vibrates the remote controller, so
Right. It'll
it
beep at
does
you.
bring it
You'll
more
know.
front of mind.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Now, on the XAG
Ooh.
side, it's very different. Although it seems the same at face value, it's not.
Okay.
When you set 15%, for example, in this case, low battery level, the
Right.
drone is taking into account the payload capacity and the distance from of its path back home, and it's actually landing at 15%, not starting its return home path at 15%. And
Oh.
I don't know what kind of magic they use in their algorithm. It is incredibly accurate. We've tested it at long distances, heavy payloads, no payloads. It'll basically land within a couple percent of 15% every single time. And in some
Does it ever
cases,
land lower than 15%?
only if you like override the drone while it's landing and keep
Ah,
it hovering for longer. But if
okay.
you let it
Okay.
land on its own, no, it's pretty much
Wow.
spot on every time. So
That's
you'll
amazing.
notice when it's flying, it might start returning home at 25% or 30%
Right.
or
Right.
17%, depending on the level of the tank and the distance.
Okay. So when, and I've had this, I've been out in the field with this a gajillion times on the XAG side too. And I've experienced the same exact thing. It's like it is like bang on going to be back at whatever number I've set, which I usually use 15% too, or also. So I mean, in my experience of flying these two aircraft on DJI, I do think about battery life. It's like back in the day with all of our other drones that we've been selling for
Mhm.
whatever 15 years now. That you always had to track. It was like battery life, battery life, battery life, battery life. It was all we thought about
Right.
generally. Um, where on my experience operating the XAG is I don't think about battery at all.
I never look
It
at
just
it.
it does. Yeah, I don't look at it. Yeah, because it
Yeah.
just manages it for me.
It's to
Wow,
me, it's a
it's a
huge
big difference.
safety. It's a big safety factor. I mean,
And I
when I,
really,
yeah,
yeah, I really don't like that DJI ships these things without that low battery, with that fail safe being continued. That's really crazy.
it's bizarre, especially because if you look at other DJI products like their camera drones, they do
Right.
have the distance and it calculates it properly like you would expect. And it's
Interesting.
on by default. So I think it's just
All
something
right,
to
y'all.
do with I haven't quite figured out how to manage the weight of the payload versus the power consumption
Yeah.
and distance. It is a
Yeah.
complicated system on a spraying drone because the payload is always variable. Um,
That's true. Yeah, there's a lot of dynamics that go into that formula to calculate all that.
yeah, it's really complex.
And I bet XAG is not going to tell them the secret sauce. No way.
Nope.
All right. So I think in summary, and y'all, we're going to do another video for the other part because this one took too long also. But I think in summary, Simon, all of these things, I want people to really remember this as takeaways. All of these things are software based and firmware based and things that happen inside software. All of these things are likely going to change, and we'll do a new video when they do significantly change. But all of these aspects can be updated and improved and enhanced by either manufacturer. So, that's one of the reasons we sell both brands, is it allows us to be unbiased, because I don't recommend people be fanboys or girls or whatever's if either camp, because you can't count on it always being this better than that. Like they're really fierce competitors, and they're doing a great job of upping the game for the other person, which we love. So just keep that in mind. All of this is subject to change. And, I know that videos like this and the fierce competition between these two is making both of these players better companies for us as end users and providers and, custom applicators out there. So, just stay tuned, because DJI can fix 99% of those things that we brought up that we didn't love in a series of, development work, and so can XAG. Simon, anything else you'd add in closing here?
No, I think that covers it.
Okay. All right, cool. All right. Thanks for watching, everyone. Check out the rest of the videos in this series to learn more about these two brands and how they rock and how they suck. Awesome. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.